Hey, you, welcome to Real Estate Breakthrough. I've got Brett Swarts here with me to talk about this. Tell me, it's capital gains tax solutions. I know that's your thing, but here's the thing I want to talk about. Really just get straight to, you're an expert in DSTs, and DSTs is go. You tell us.
It's a deferred sales trust. It's not a Delaware statutory trust. And it's not a 1031 exchange, but it accomplishes a lot of the same, a similar things, such as tax deferral, but it provides so much more freedom, so much more flexibility. It is the Netflix to exit planning versus the old Blockbuster 1031, CRTs, opportunity zones, traditional installment sales. Those are all Blockbuster, kind of really inflexible and don't necessarily give you the freedoms you want, whereas the deferred sales trust gives you so many freedoms. And we can talk about, by the way, the eight freedoms that it gives to you that creates the transformational exit plan.
That's perfect, because that's exactly where I want to go. And then I want to compare it to the 1031 exchange. And then I want to go through, well, what do you do once it's in it? So let's start with the eight freedoms. I mean, normally you and I would do a setup, but we're just rolling right into it because Brett, we know each other from before. We've been on a panel together before. We've done a mini podcast before focused on education, financial education in kids, which I loved. And now here we are to actually talk about your true area of expertise. Okay, so the eight freedoms that you get with the deferred sales trust.
Yes, I'm going to lay them all out, right?
Okay,
and then we can dive into a few of them or all of them or whatever, right? So first of all, you have the 1031 exchange freedom, Right. You have what's called entrepreneurial freedom. Okay. You have location freedom. Okay. You have cash flow and wealth planning freedom. You have retirement freedom. You also have estate tax freedom. Okay. And you have debt freedom. Okay. And then I like to say the last one would be like, legacy family freedom, right? And now there's strategy that might give you one, maybe two of these, right? But the deferred sales trust is the only one we found here at Capital Gains Tax Solutions that actually gives you all of them. Some people only need one or two of these, by the way, to create the transformation. But when you start to stack these, it's like a value stack, right? You start to stack all of these, you're like, wow, any one of them are like pretty cool. But when you add them all together and you know how to unlock it, then it creates the transformation.
So I want you to go a little deeper into that. Like, let's just take a moment and compare the freedoms you get from this and versus the 1031 exchange. I've done 1031 exchanges. People ask me all the time, do you suggest a 1031 exchange? I'm like, under the right conditions, because it's a pain in the backside to try to meet the timelines of 45 days, identifying 180 days, closing escrow. And oh, by the way, it forces you into a lateral move. It doesn't allow you to move from the top of the market to the bottom of the market. You either are going from top to top or bottom to bottom, which means it doesn't actually allow you to preserve gains realized if you're doing bottom to bottom, that maybe you've lost 3 years, 4 years worth of gains, because now you have to move in that time period. So it's useful. It's a good tax shelter, but it forces you into a timeline in response to the market you may not want to be involved in. So I'm like, yeah, I'd bust a 1031 exchange if it isn't going to work for you. So now take it from there. I tried to lay you up there.
Yeah. So it's a sell high, buy low. We call that the shotgun wedding, and our parents taught us to sell high and buy low, not sell high and buy higher 180 days later. Especially right now, current market conditions, you're seeing interest rates go from about 3.5 to about 6.5. Like, it's crazy, right? In the last 90 days, it's a little more longer than that, but it's really intense. So if, let's say you sold and you're in your 45 day right now, well, 40 days ago, interest rates were lower, and another 40 days, you're still waiting to close. You could be a point or two higher than when you sold. And so what you really want to focus on with real estate, ideally, is borrowing at a lower interest rate than your actual cash on cash return.
Oh, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Or your cap rate, right? Because your cap rate's your unleveraged rate of return. So we want to have, let's say, a 6 cap and borrowing, let's say, at 4%, right? You have a little delta there. Well, what happens when you borrow at 6% and the cap rates are maybe still 4.5? Well, now you're in a inverse relationship, right? Which is not good for your cash flow, right? Not good for the deal. Now, it doesn't mean you can't buy something that has tremendous amount of value add opportunity, and then you can work with that. But that's the thing we're seeing right now. We're seeing very low inventory. We're still seeing sellers that are reluctant to give up on their pricing. They might just hold on to it. We're seeing buyers in this panic to try to buy it for a 1031. So what you need is a freedom from the 1031 exchange, which is the deferred sales trust, where you can not only sell and save a failed 1031 exchange, but you can sell and not even using it at all. We can rescue a failed or just put the money into this trust. Now, this trust, think of it like a long-term 1031. The funds sit there, and when it's sitting there, it's owing you money, right? So you're earning interest on that, because what you're doing is actually loaning these funds to this trust in exchange for a promissory note. You became the bank. So at a 1031, it's a continuity strategy where you're trading ownership for ownership. You're trading, right? In this scenario, you're giving up ownership of the asset in exchange for a promissory note. But enter this next phase right here. You can buy at optimal timing. And this kind of leads into the second part of the wealth plan for the DST, is that it gives you optimal timing, basically wealth plan freedom. What does that mean? Well, that means if and when a deal makes sense for you, you can form an LLC and become an owner again, because we always want to be owners, right? We want to be entrepreneurs. We want to be owners. We want to be building wealth and ownership. And the trust becomes that silent joint venture partner. It's kind of like that rich uncle, Christina, that puts up the money and you do the work, right?
Yeah, right.
But it gives you a decent deal on the interest rate. So this trust that owes you the money is kind of like that rich uncle that puts the money up for the deal, and you can buy and own and develop, which leads into the third freedom, which is entrepreneurial freedom. But I'm going to pause there, Christina, because I know I don't want to go too many layers until we make sure we clarify the first two.
No, that's good. I think it's important that people understand how it works. Like, it's important people understand how it works. And the reason why is I had a client who came to me. I actually suggested a client check you out. I don't know if they ever actually made it to you or not, but I had a client who's like, I'm like, they're stuck in this 1031 exchange scenario. I'm like, here's your options. I gave them 3 options: a 1031 exchange, another syndicator I know who took 1031 exchange money, and Brett. Those were the 3 options. Right? And I said, go check out Brett, because I think that's really a good choice. And what they were left with, the question they were left with was, okay, so I take my money out of this building I sell. I move it into this deferred sales trust. Now, how do I invest it? Like, that was their gap. That was their hole. And I'm like, well, it gives you so much freedom to be able to choose what you're going to invest in, almost as if it was in a bank account that you have control over, or an IRA, because an IRAs have like legal guidelines around it, right? The deferred sales trust has boundaries around it, but it still allows you, like you said, the rich uncle, right? It still gives you access to what you have and choices, which is freedom, which is so important for us as investors and entrepreneurs, the freedom to invest in something, but there's a thing that has to happen there. So go through that thing.
Absolutely. And by the way, what you're calling that is the investment class freedom, right? So in a 1031 exchange, you got to try like kind investment property for like kind investment property, whereas the deferred sales trust, there's no like kind requirement. So the money can be invested into stocks, bonds, mutual funds, hard money lending, ground up real estate development, passive or active real estate deals, cryptocurrency. In other words, you can dollar cost average, you can diversify, you can get liquidity, right? Which is so important right now, to have liquidity, diversification, and also be out of debt, because things are shifting and changing. The last thing you want to do is double down on let's say a poorly planned real estate deal just to defer the tax in a 1031,
right,
to find yourself pressured and stressed out and overwhelmed and like depressed, because you're like, gosh, I built this wealth and this property for 5, 10, 20, 30 years, whatever. And I have all this tax, and man, I know it's not a good time to buy right now. Everything is kind of shaky, but I'm going to do it anyways, this feel like I'm trapped here. So now let's shift that. Let's give a creative solution here, and let's move into the deferred sales trust. And so once the funds are there, the investments have to be approved by you. Now I'm a trustee, third party unrelated trustee. I got to approve too. So you got to give up some control. You don't have what's called unilateral control, which tends to be the biggest thing for people to help them overcome, right? And, the idea of, I don't know Brett, I haven't met Brett or his team, like millions of dollars. And we had a client, they were selling a $13 million car wash. There's actually 4 clients in San Diego, and they had built it from the ground up. Old taco stand, and they built it to $4 million car wash with a taco restaurant inside of that, and they sold it for $13 million. And entrepreneurs, right? And they're in the business of buying land, developing businesses, and selling. But they're also not in the business of taking that $13 million and moving into a building that not going to help them build their business. They're not buying $13 million car washes. They're selling them. They're developers. So they're like, Brett, we've been doing this over and over and over again. We never 1031 exchange for a number of reasons, but you're telling me we can have our cake and eat it too. We can defer the tax and then use the funds to go build develop real estate. I'm like, yeah. They're like, wow, this sounds too good to be true. We just saw you on YouTube, and we have 22 days to close. What can we do? And obviously we put them in touch with the banks, financial advisor, the legal team. We go through it all, but they end up doing the deal. In fact, one guy actually wanted to just pay his tax. He's kind of ready to retire. So he paid his tax. The other three used the deferred sales trust for the deferral. Right. And so they said, well, Brett, can I invest it back into our own deals? Yes. When I want to? Yes. Do you have to approve it? Yeah, I have to approve it. I have to look at it, right? I can't be unilateral decisions, but the odds of me saying no to an investment are very low, especially because guess what? When they invest in this deal, and this is the entrepreneurial freedom, they can use the funds to invest and make another $5 or $6 million gain. And that can be promissory note number 2. So you have your first promissory note, right? As the original amounts, plus you just made capital or made a return on this bigger amount. And now you have 2 promissory notes in one trust. Now each of these trusts are set up for each of their partners, each partner. So it's not like it's commingled. So I'll pause there. I know I said a whole lot, but hopefully that's answering your question.
I don't want you to pause. I want you to pause because what you're describing to me is this, and I don't want you to pause. Maybe my listeners want you to pause, but I don't want you to pause because you're answering my question. But the question is, I give it to you. Okay, so I have to trust you as a trustee. Okay, I have trustees on other things as well. Not a big deal. I know I need to trust other professionals. I happen to know, like, and trust you, Brett, because I've seen you in the community. I've seen you've been around for years. I've been on a panel with you. I've moderated a panel you were on. So I've had a chance to do that. So it's an easy thing for me to get over, to go, yeah, Brett and I are going to make decisions together. Cool, no problem. I do that all the time with other professionals in my field and in my world. Now, I invest in something else and I make more money. Nice. So what you're telling me is I deferred sales trust. I've got my original note in there, which I'm using as cash, collateral, whatever, to be able to do my next investment, ground up development, or buying a shopping center. I don't like shopping centers, but some people do. Maybe buying a multi-unit, which I love. So you can do something with it. Now, I'm going to sell that again, and I've just made another $5 million. Walk me forward from there.
Excellent. So let's take the scenario. Let's make it really simple. Let's say you did the first deal was $10 million deal.
Yep.
And of that 10 million, let's say you put 3 million for their development project, and now you're selling it for another $10 million gain, right? So we'll keep it really simple. Okay. So that original 10 million was the promissory note. 3 million went into an LLC over here. Okay. And that 3 million now turned into 10 million. Now of that upside, or turned into 13 of the upside of another 10 million, you can get a second promissory note. So let's just say that's 7 million after you paid the trust back plus the pref return, right? Let's say it was as simple as that, right? So you had the first note at 10 million, the second one basically at 7 million. Okay. Now you got a total of $17 million that's owed to you, 1 trust, 2 promissory notes. So the question is, A, what's my gain? B, what's my tax? C, what am I trying to accomplish, right? Where am I trying to go? Well, I'm trying to develop projects and properties, right? Not 1031. Excellent. And then how's the deferred sales trust, like in a Rubik's Cube? How are we going to move it around for your particular circumstance to try to get congruency, right? Congruency could be time freedom, could be location freedom, it could be ground up development, real estate freedom, right? And what you'll quickly learn, it's not just the actual IRS tax code, which is IRC 453, which is an installment sale. And then we couple it with the trust, which is the deferred sales trust. Okay. It's actually the team of professionals to execute it. And you said it very well. You said that I trust myself with other professionals, escrow, financial advisors. And by the way, we also have third-party financial advisors, third-party banks, third-party tax attorney, CPAs that do the books for the tax return. We have all these different parties that actually provide transparency and accountability and all of those things. But the point is, how do we all work together as a team to execute the strategy to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish? Because you're the hero of the story. You're the one making the wealth, doing the deals. You just have to know how to unlock, the strategy that gives you these more freedoms. Yes.
Okay. So now I have 17 million sitting with you could say, as my fiduciary.
The trust. And by the way, it's not commingled with other accounts. It's not another personal accounts or business accounts. It's a single entity business trust. This is very important, that only does business with you, Christina. And if you're married, your husband, just you two, right? That's it. It won't do business with anybody else, and it's never commingled, and the funds will never move without your signature or approval. But yes, keep going.
Okay, no, it's good, because this is exactly all the little nuances that people want to know about that would make them hesitant, right? That made my client hesitant when they came back and they were like, well, I looked at some of the videos, but I don't know. I really like, I'm like, okay. So they ended up not doing a 1031 exchange, anything. They just ended up taking the tax hit because they had enough tax shelter to be able to just take the tax hit. Okay, cool. That's perfect for them, but they should still know about the vehicle. So I now have $17 million inside of this enclosed box, just like an IVA, just like any other enclosed entity box. Now, what do I do if I've decided I'm ready to retire and I want to start taking cash out?
Great question. So we can customize the trust to pay you based upon your needs and your wants. It's your money. How do you want to receive it? And we just schedule payments. So to keep it simple, imagine it's a house and you owe the money to the bank and you borrowed $1 million from the bank at 4% with interest-only payments. What do? You pay the 4% interest-only payments every single year. Well, this is exactly what's happened. You became the bank, you loan the money to the trust, and the trust could say pay you that 4%. Now, we typically have 5 to 8% return net of fees over any given period of time. Not a guarantee, not a promise. I mean, it's a promise to pay, but it's not a guarantee that it's going to happen. We got to go make the investments to make the return, right? But we've been able to achieve that so far. It's pretty good on any 10-year kind of horizon. Okay, so you start just taking payments. Now on those payments, you just get a direct deposit to your account and you pay ordinary income tax on that interest that you've received. So let's say it's 10 million and you're taking $500,000 of payments. That 500,000 would be ordinary income tax. And so you could also think of it like a delayed tax trust.
Yes.
You also kind of think of this like an IRA. Like, what are you doing with an IRA? Well, if you put 10 million into an IRA,
right,
it's in a deferral state and it's growing tax deferred until you start taking distributions, and then you'll get a 1099 and you report that to your CPA. Simple, right? You're like, oh, that's good. I just pay tax on that. Now let's imagine you had some depreciation over here. Well, that depreciation might offset some of that cash flow. So that's the part where we do some tax flow engineering with you. You work with Christina to find maybe some multifamily syndications or some multifamily deals, and you guys partner up together. By the way, the trust can partner with other partners like Christina, who are finding the deals, actively doing the deals, all of that. Now, wow, now we're working this into a way where, again, what are they trying to achieve? What are you trying to do? What is your B, right? What's your ideal wealth plan and time and energy plan? How do we hire the team to help you get there?
Okay, so bottom line, I pay tax when it comes out. I don't pay tax as it grows, as long as I keep it in the box. When I take it out of the box, I pay tax, just like an IVA. Not a problem. I understand that. Easy enough. Okay, so now, did I hear, like, if I don't invest the money at all? Let's say you're holding my original 10, but I don't do anything with it for 5 years. Does it just stay $10 million?
Well, great question. It depends on the interest rate on the promissory note. Again, most of our notes are at 8% compounding rate of return. So that'd be $800,000 per year, right? And let's imagine you didn't take any payments times 5. That's like 4 million, although it's compounding to be even more than that, right? Nice. So, but just simple math, 4 million plus whatever compounding was in addition to that. So it'd be about $14 million. Now, you do need to take some payments. It's not something where you can just stick in there like an IRA and just wait till you're 60 something to start taking it out. We do like to see some payments coming out typically in about year 2, but it doesn't have to be the full 8%. It could be half of that interest. Even though it's accruing at 8, you might take, let's say, 400,000 starting in, let's say, year 2. So there's some nuances there. But what's neat about it is with DST, and by the way, there's also a 2.0 versus a 1.0. 1.0, it's kind of an adjustable, meaning you might, one year you say, I have clients that sell a business. And they're like, well, I'm staying on for 2 years to get an earnout and I'm getting paid a pretty high salary. I go, great. Well, when are you getting out of that? Well, about 2 years. Well, why don't we have 0 payments for 2 years? Like, right. Okay, you can compound at 8. And then when that time's over, boom, let's start taking that, because your income is going to drop on your active side, and let's get the passive coming in to offset that. So those are some real cool, like, little nuances there as well.
No, I love that you get to play with it and define it. I mean, it is, to me, it's a magical box that's almost so magical. I can understand why people don't believe it, right? Which is part of why when I got the email saying, hey, can you have Brett on your show? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Remember I sent you an email going, why didn't I have you on my show sooner? Like, explain this to me, right? Because it is this sort of magical box that people are constantly searching for a solution. I have maybe 5, 6, 8 times a year. I have clients go, so now what am I going to do in the blah, blah, blah? Is it a 1030? I'm asked this question on a regular basis from my clients and from my meeting members.
And let me give you one story, maybe two if we have time, about how to overcome what you're probably feeling or thinking right now, which is, man, this sounds amazing, Brett, but it does sound like a magical fairy tale, a magical box. Like, you're probably very smart, sophisticated, and you've earned a lot, or at least your professionals are helping you do the tax stuff. And you're like, I'm shocked. I've been doing this for I hear this every single day, 5, 10, 20, 30 years, some of the best in the business. I have clients that are multi-million-dollar clients, moving towards those that are billionaire clients. And they're saying, Brett, how have we not heard of this? It sounds too good to be true. And let me just tell you one story. And by the way, people don't overcome, we call it a false belief or a myth with just logic. Although there's been thousands of closes, billions under management, 26 years of the Deferred Sales Trust, over 20 no change IRS audits, all the track record's perfect, all the analytical stuff, all the logic stuff I can tell you. But let me tell you just one story, which will help, I think, give you some confidence and some clarity on just how well this has been vetted by outside groups that are very smart. And so this is a gentleman, I call this it's, I guess, really the David Young story. And you may not know David Young, but David Young was kind of the right-hand arm or partner with a guy named Bill Gross. And you may not even know who Bill Gross is, but for those who don't know, Bill Gross and David Young, with about 5 other guys, they were kind of the main leaders to help build what's called PIMCO. And PIMCO is one of the largest kind of like money managers wealth in the world. So they're world-class at what they do. Anyways, they helped build it from 80 billion to 1.2 trillion like 20 years ago. Okay. And these guys are doing some huge business. They all retire from PIMCO. They get a big payday. And David and those 4 other guys form a group called Anfield Capital. And about 5 years ago, they get approached with the Deferred Sales Trust. And like most of us hearing it for the first time, they said, A, sounds too good to be true. B, I'm skeptical and cautious here. But C, we're open-minded. We'll be open-minded. And so they do a 2-year due diligence. And if you can imagine guys like this, they get approached by a lot of people who want them to sell their tax strategy, right? To get access to their clients. And so they're very cautious and careful. And they have their legal team review it. They talk to clients, they talk to banks, they review all the ins and outs. They actually fly back, meet with one of my business partners who's the brilliant genius behind this. He's the tax attorney CPA. I call him the Elon Musk of tax. We can do a whole nother show on that alone. But they sit down with him, their whole legal team, for 2 days, and they map it all on this whiteboard, all the questions that you're asking right now. And they sign the NDA, so they get even the more inside secrets. And after 2 years of due diligence and 2 full days doing all this, they came through with really 2 conclusions. Okay. Everything kind of came in 2. Number 1, that might be this Elon Musk CPA tax attorney, the smartest person I've ever met. And number 2, we're all in. Where do we join? We will manage the capital. We'll become a part of the inner circle for any Deferred Sales Trust clients to help manage capital with the financial advisor, because they don't just typically manage direct capital. They really work with the financial advisor. They're kind of the bigger arm on top. And, so I always ask the question. So if you're a skeptic and you're listening to this right now, and Christina and myself, we were all skeptics at one point. If it's good enough for David Young and his legal team, after 2 years of due diligence, they're world-class at what they do. They're putting their name on it. Is it good enough for all of us, right? Is it good enough for your legal team? And that's where we found that it's a resounding absolutely, right? Once they hear that, once they understand that, and then once they bring in their teams to connect with all these parties, then they all join us. They all say, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Now we haven't signed the NDAs. We don't give away our secrets, right? But then they all start becoming believers, is what I call it, Christina.
Yeah, and that is important, because it is, there's so many nuances to it. Like, okay, I'll give you one question I think is a tough question, and then I'm going to move on to my next tough question, which is part of every show I do. How do you guys manage to offer an 8% preferred return, or not preferred, but 8% return to somebody like me who says, hey, I thought I was giving you my IRA doesn't promise to give me a return. It sits idle unless I actively invest it, right? With a self-directed IRA, right? But yet you're saying, hey, if I give you 10 million, by the way, you might actually give me a higher return than any other asset that's approaching me right now. Any other deal that I've got right now, I might actually do better to leave it with you. Why? How can you do that?
Yeah, good question. And first of all, the DST is just a wrapper, like an IRA is a wrapper, right? That's just the wrapper, or 401k is the wrapper. Exactly. The investments are all the, it's all going to same investments, right? Those are just the wrappers, right? Although we can go into commercial real estate, passive or active, which is actually our favorite. So step one is diversification, right? It's important to understand that over any 10-year period of time, we're not guaranteeing every single year that we're going to hit 8. Some years may be a little higher, some years may be a little lower, but over any 10-year period of time, I think the stock market's, who you're talking, 9 to 12% is the amount overall, year in and year out over any 10-year period of time. Now, a lot of the commercial real estate operators that we work with and syndicators, they're actually typically, I won't say typically is a good word because now everything's kind of not typical right now, but they have in 3 to 5 years doubled money. So you put $100,000 investment, 3 to 5 years, it's typically $200,000 with the cash flow and with the appreciation. And so the rule of 72 states if I can earn 7% compounding over a 10-year period of time, I double my money, right? And so we might have a mix between certain investments that you were looking for doubles, other ones that are a little more conservative, right? Other ones that were dollar cost averaging, other ones that are, ground up development. So some bigger hits, other ones that are cash flowing now. So it's not a one size fits all, and it's not a guarantee these investments will prefer an 8%. But guess what? If you're paying 25 to 50% of your gain in capital gains tax and depreciation recapture, then you're already so far ahead that even if we didn't get exactly 8 and you hit 7, you're probably even if you got 5, you still be happy. You're like, well, I still got an extra 25 to 50%. It's like we're running a marathon, Christina, right? And I give you a 25 to 50% head start. Like you're probably going to get there quicker, right? By the way, also to mention, the Deferred Sales Trust works for business exits, primary homes, cryptocurrency, stock, carried interest, right? Works for syndications that are in GP interest or LP interest if people want to move out. And I need to have $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain. It's got to be big enough, right? So make sure you understand that. We don't do deals that are smaller than that unless you have 2 at $500,000 each that you can combine in a kind of a shorter period of time. But that's sort of the answer. Now, the other thing I like too is lending. So we work with a group that does some hard money lending, and they've never dropped below 10. In fact, last month they paid about 11. So they're just paying 12 or 13%. And they're actually lending to multifamily developers or people that are buying properties. The average borrower is worth has done 25 deals, is worth $4 million and has excellent credit. And these are 6, 12, 18-month loans. And they have this fund that they're doing all of these in, and they've never dropped below 10%. So it's a mix between all of those, Christina. That would be the answer so far.
Okay, no, it gives me an idea of you guys are an active investment house. What is behind my box is this active investment house that you guys are engaged in managing the money and trying to bring forward a return off of it.
Yeah, and by that we mean we will bring in the best. So think of us like the offensive coordinator, and there's like everyone's on the field playing football. And we're going to bring in some of the best commercial real estate operators and syndicators and introduce them to you. And we're going to bring in some of the best financial advisor or advisors, introduce them to you. And each person of their expertise is going to be that person who presents an idea to the trust as a whole, and we decide. So our role is the trustee, but we like to make these amazing introductions from some of the best in the business. And we also like to lead by example. Like if we're not investing in the deal ourselves, right? Or a really close client has a really strong relationship and has put, let's say, millions of dollars with them in the past, and we trust that client, we're probably not ever going to introduce them to you, right? They're not going to, we're kind of on our short list. So yeah, we're going to try to bring the best, but guess what? A lot of our clients are very entrepreneurial. They already know all the groups. They're already doing it themselves. And then they say, great, let's go into those groups. Let's go in with you. And so it's not again, this is back to the control thing. It's not like you're just entrusting everything to us and you're just giving it up. No, we're working as a team. Now, some clients are like that. Some are just like, Brett, I had a client named Chuck, and he's like, Brett, I don't ever want to touch real estate ever again. This is a year and a half ago, 26 years, student housing, $2.6 million apartment complex near Tucson, Arizona. Yeah. And he's like, just put me in the biggest S&P 500 companies in the world. And if those 500 companies fail, hey, I fail. But I don't want to pay the tax and I just want to retire. I don't want to think about real estate ever again. Other ones are like, I loathe the stock market, only put me into real estate. That's right. And so we're going to try to really find a fine-tuned, plan for them, what they like. We do need to keep about 20% liquid, right? Okay. Investment grade securities typically in those amounts. Okay. So there are a little bit of some guardrails there, but hopefully that answers your question.
That was maybe my next question is there must be some regulations. There are some guardrails there. So 20% needs to be some version of liquid. So stocks or cash. Okay. Yes. So I guess my question is does it have to be invested in order for the trust to keep its integrity legally?
Yeah, it does. So it's not something where you can just be like, hey, just put it in cash and have
Yeah.
no intent for any business purpose or any investment purpose and just sit there. But does it mean we have to put investments right away? No. I've had clients sit for 3, 6, 7, 8, 9 months and just dollar cost average in.
Okay.
That's okay. It's not, but it's not something where long-term plan, because eventually, the goose is going to get eaten up by fees. We have annual recurring fees and tax returns. And the whole intent of this is to get the money working, not to just sit it under the mattress, right? That's the point of all of it.
Well, I mean, so you've got two reasons there. You've got the fact that, notice a 1031 exchange doesn't let you exchange into cash either. Just saying, like the purpose of the shelter of the 1031 exchange, as far as the IRS is concerned, is to not allow you to sit on cash, right? So that you're talking about the same thing with this trust, right? Deferred, and notice it's a deferred sales trust, right? It's in the name itself. So it has the same sort of requirement as a 1031, which is, you got to be able to continue to engage.
You're exactly right. The tax code is made for us to do the things that the government doesn't do very well and can't force us to do, such as like multifamily housing, right? Such as real estate development. They're not very good at it and it's hard to do. And if they give us some big tax incentives, then we, as hard paying, tax paying Americans, we're like, well, I'll do the 1031. I'll do the deferred sales trust. Yeah. So the whole point is not to use it for personal use. That doesn't mean you can't use it for a business investment. That's fine. But it can't be like a primary home investment or just spending money. That's taxable. I mean, you can take the money and just pay your tax on that, but not in a tax incentivized way. So we make sure to follow those guardrails too. That make sure that the investments are going in for businesses. They're going in for the stock market. They're going into real estate deals. And all of these things actually spur economic growth, which creates more jobs, which creates more tax revenue. So the biggest winner here is the IRS, right? Is the California Franchise Tax Board. They're winning because it's unlocking the capital. Like, for example, we did an $8 million deal in Palo Alto as a primary home. And this is all of this gentleman's capital. And he had owned this property. His 6 kids are out of the house. And he's like, got this huge house on University Avenue, primary home, doesn't qualify for a 1031. And now he can take the capital and deploy it and live off the cash flow, pay tax on that. Otherwise, and defer all the tax, by the way. But after his debt and tax, if he would have not had the deferred sales trust, he couldn't even sell his house, right? But now you have a new family coming in there, right? Who can take advantage of all the rooms. You've got new property taxes for that property because he just got moved up to a new property tax. He gets the cash flow. He pays tax on that. He gets to relocate. So it's the movement of money, which is a really good thing for everybody.
It is. And again, when you talk about, the requirement, if you had something go by where I went, oh, that's just again like a 1031 exchange or an IRA where you have this requirement. I can't remember what it was, but it's set up by the government in order to ensure that investment activities are occurring. So that's why they are these bumper rails that are on it. It's not you guys, right? So there's both the government requirement and you guys are like, hey, you really don't want us to ding your account that much. Like you want to be out investing, dude, because if you leave it in cash, we're going to be like Bank of America where you pay that $25 every month. Like you really don't want that. So you want to be able to grow it. So there's 2 good reasons to have invested. Okay.
But there is optimal timing. You can dollar cost average, you can buy low, sell high, and you don't have the 45-day window to identify, 180 days to close. You've got total freedom for timing, which is so important right now, right? Because nobody wants to overpay.
Yes, right now in particular, like if I'm selling a falling asset, the last thing I want to do is have 180 days to get into an even more falling asset to continue to fall for potentially another 18 months, right? To 2 years. Some people are saying more than that, right? Some people are, every time there's a downturn, there's always the sky is falling camp and no, it'll be moderate camp. So it depends on which camp you're in or who your advisor is. And this show isn't about that. We can do another show about that some other day. Here's my question, Brett. Tell me about a situation that went wrong and how your company made it right, right? Because that's always a growing experience for every investor. When something goes wrong, how do you or the professionals you work with make it right so that you're protected and you learn a lesson at the end? It grows you up as an investor.
Yeah, there was a deal we did, and we were a little bit reluctant to do the deal because it would call them a smaller size. It was still about 700,000, but it was California. It was below our minimum. But it was for a couple out of the Bay Area, and she happened to be a realtor herself. And the tax liability was about, I think, 160,000. And we looked at that ratio, and we looked at the complexity, and we said, I don't think we should do it, but we went ahead and we did it. We did the deal. We closed it. And I would say that was what we did wrong. We should have just said no from the beginning. We should have stuck to kind of our minimums there, because fast forward about a year and a half in, she was out of real estate into the stock market. And this is kind of the COVID period as well. So you're seeing these wild swings. So she wasn't as comfortable in the stock market, right? So that was stressful for her. B, her and her husband. B, there wasn't a lot of pain in the tax. And so when you start, when the ongoing fees were hitting, she's like, well, man, by the way, what are the ongoing fees? It's about 1.5% to 2% on the AUM. So let's say you had $1 million in the trust, it's about $15,000 to $20,000 in the trust. So if your liability, let's say 250 or 300 or 400,000, where you're like, wow, that's the alternatives to pay all that money. So her liability is about 160, 150, and it was about 750 in the account. So it wasn't that much pain, right? And so
I understand. Yeah, I'm with you.
She's going like, what's my return on an investment? We're like, yeah, we kind of told you it was small. Anyways, it just basically led to all these things kind of led to, let's say, a poor experience for her. Now, how we made it right was she wanted to get out, and we're like, no problem, we can get you out. But how do we do strategic about this? Over the next 30 days, we think the market's going to be at a certain point, and we think we can probably basically help you break even from what you came in at, And so she said, okay, I think that's good. And so we worked with the financial advisor to time it, to kind of basically dollar cost average out, and essentially be able to close out the trust. She's going to pay our tax on about the 150, 160, but still, we made it right, but making sure that, she basically got what she put in and didn't really lose any money.
Nice. The whole point is that you guys didn't sit there and go, hey, you know what, your timing, your mistake, or maybe we shouldn't have done it, but that's our lesson. You want out today, fine, just go. Right? You said, no, let's steward you and protect you till the end. And the best ending we can suggest is here. So if we continue to work together, continue to be a team, continue to make solid decisions to protect you, the investor, here's our suggestion on what we think is going to be the best for you in ending up having a nice, clean finish.
Exactly right.
Because honestly, if you're not going to protect my back, I have no reason to invest with you.
Exactly. Yeah. If you don't feel like you're part of our family when you come with us, you should feel like family, right? Then yeah, you're right. You should be with us. We wouldn't be growing. So that's what we try to do. We just treat everyone like our family and be like we're a part of it and we're helping them out.
Yeah, and it's why it's easy for me to say, yeah, Brett should be on my show, because a lot of the people who watch my show know I have this thing about needs to be of character, needs to be of integrity. They need to be watching your back, because if that ain't your stick, then I shouldn't be sending my clients to you, or I shouldn't be sending my meeting members to you, or I shouldn't be sending people who are watching my show to you. So I try very hard to kind of have a sense of due diligence, or I don't do a full due diligence on all my speakers, but I could.
I do try to. And by the way, you should run the background check, run all the things, right? Talk to all the clients. We encourage you to do that. We have a clean, clear, crisp background. So
yeah, no, it's good. And I do, and before I invest, and before my clients invest in any particular entity, any particular fiduciary assets under management of any kind, I'm like, yeah, we're going to do this. Because
hey, trust but verify, right? Trust but verify.
Yeah. Was it tie up your camel, pray to Allah, but tie up your camel. Something that a friend of mine used to say, pray to Allah, but still tie up your camel. So my show is called Real Estate Breakthrough. And that's why we talk about using real estate, whether it's through a DST, to break through to your financial freedom. So we've talked about your DST. We've talked about something went wrong, which grows us all up as investors, right? Whether it's your fiduciary or whether you're an investor. What does financial freedom mean to you? Why are you playing this game? You're smart, Brett. You're engaging, right? You're personable. You could get a W-2 from just about any company you really felt like you wanted to be involved with. Why be involved in this game of real estate in this particular asset class? What's financial freedom mean to you?
Yeah, I believe we've all been given certain gifts in this life, and these gifts have been given to us by God to be a blessing and help to others.
Yes.
And to the extent that we're using and developing and serving with those gifts, makes us come alive and helps us to be fulfilled and helps us to make a difference in this world. And so somebody came up with this, but I kind of call it the success formula or fulfillment formula, which is, first of all, understanding what your gifts are, what your best strengths on, what's the kind of unique thing that you were given. times maximizing the potential of that. So really working on that, developing that. It would be like a Steph Curry, and he found out he was an amazing basketball player. And so he just developed, and it's shooting in particular, he niched down, I'm going to be the best shooter in the world. And he just kept developing that. Right. And then number 3 is, how do I make the most impact as many people as I can? Right. Yeah. And then you divide that, or not divide that, but just even times that by a bigger purpose in life. And the bigger purpose is, bringing glory to God, right? With all of that, helping other people. And that, once you're doing all of those, if you get all of those lined up, boom, that equals success and fulfillment. You come alive, you get energy, all of those things are together. And then of course, time with family, time with, being able to enjoy your energy. I have young kids, so spending time with my family, especially when they're still young. We just went to Hawaii for 17 days, and I was able to work half the time and play half the time. And so all of those cool things where you're not necessarily tied to those schedules. We also homeschool our kids. And so that helps us to be able to go on the off season. We're recording this in October when nobody was in Hawaii, or at least less people were, versus the holiday season. So those are all the things that kind of come to mind.
Yeah. I love your answer, Brett, but I was going to love your answer, because we've had conversations before about children and the quality and ethics of trying to raise your kids and being really engaged and trying to make the next generation a better human being than maybe we are ourselves, and preparing them for really engaging and making a difference on this planet. And that's what I hope to do. That's what you hope to do. That's what is satisfying and fulfilling to us as human beings. I remember I was standing outside a door one time of my meeting, and I had a pretty good, it wasn't a big name person on the stage, but a pretty good name person was on the stage. And this lady must not have known that I was running the meeting, because I started walking up to the door, and she's like, "Why do you think that person's presenting up there? Why is that guy up there?" And I went, "Okay, I don't know. Why? Tell me more about why you're asking the question." She's like, "If that guy's so blooming rich, then why is he bothering to be up on that stage and talking to all of us people? I don't get it. He must not be that rich." And I went, Now, in that moment, I was remembering there's a quote by Jerry Lewis, who does all the work with the children, right? And he was on being interviewed, and this guy asked him, "So why do you do all the work with the children?" He said, "You know what? If you're asking me that question, that probably means you're not going to understand the answer. The answer is because it's fulfilling, because it's satisfying, because helping other people do better in their world, regardless of our net worth, is one of the most satisfying and fulfilling things I know I get to do on this planet. Raising my kid is right next to it, just saying, but just like, those are my like highlights of my day, right? When somebody, I had this one guy came to my meeting, and he's like, "I'm working on ADU and my baby won't sleep." And I'm like, "Okay, let's talk about both of those," because babies and, children and real estate are my 2 gigs, right? So, and like the next meeting, he's like, "Guess what? I worked on that ADU, and by the way, the baby's sleeping better." And I'm like, yes. That was
I love it. It's so true, right? It's so true. And we got to constantly remind ourselves of those more eternal things, right? Versus just external, right? The external answer is, if he had all the money, he wouldn't need to be here. But that's if you're just living for this life, right? But if you're living for the internal stuff, right? The things that bring true fulfillment and memories and lasting legacy and make a difference in people's lives, that completely shifts. Of course, the money is just a temporary thing. That's a tool, right? But the external, and that's external, but the internal and the eternal things are the things that bring the most fulfillment and have the most legacy. But those we can all at times forget about those things. We got to make sure we remind ourselves of what we're working for.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. There are mornings when I wake up and I go, I don't want to today, and I'm like, well, but we're going to anyway. It's like, okay, fine. Brett, you're awesome. Thank you so much for the time. If people want to get a hold of you because they either want to ask you more hard questions about the deferred sales trust, or if they actually want to invest money with you, there we go. Talk to me.
Yeah. So first of all, check out my new book, and I would so appreciate the opportunity to have you buy a copy, right?
Right.
Because it gives you an opportunity to get kind of the inside secrets, to actually hear my entire story. And I have amazing people in here like David Young, the guy I told you about before, and tell his entire story. people like some expert, commercial real estate syndicators that are in here as well. And then people like Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank, who's in the book. So they always say get in the room with really smart people. So I brought a lot of really smart people into the book. I have a couple of my chapters as well, but I want you to read Building a Tax Deferred Exit Strategy. We call it the proven playbook for unlocking your ideal wealth plan when selling assets of any kind for yourself or for your clients. So whether you're a business professional, a real estate agent, a cryptocurrency expert, financial advisor, CPA, M&A advisor, you want to get the book because you want to know how to unlock it for your clients, or you are the client, you're the client themselves, the person selling the assets and want to defer the tax. You want to check that out. All of that can be found by going to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. You can also go to my YouTube channel, Capital Gains Tax Solutions. Check out my podcast, Capital Gains Tax Solutions. Find me on Instagram, search Brett Swarts, or LinkedIn, Brett Swarts.
Okay. And if they actually want to reach you directly, is that also Brett at?
Yeah, Brett at capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. You can email me there as well. Yeah. And you can book a time, free, no cost consultation by going to my website, capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. If you can apply, right? $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain per transaction, unless you have 2 at 500 each. So you can check it out all there. And we have the free ebook there as well. So if you want to get the shorter version of just an ebook, you can check that out.
Brett, you're awesome. Thank you so very much. This is Christina Suter on Real Estate Breakthrough. Thank you so much. Tune in, I think, in 2 weeks for the next show.